Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your friendly neighborhood wizard here. The purpose of this video is, well, honestly, the root of it is that I'm just bored. If you're like me, the whole COVID-19 pandemic has you locked up inside with not a lot to do. And I was just sitting around today thinking, what can I do that's different today to keep me preoccupied? And lately I've been kind of thinking over my game collection. If you don't know, I'm a pretty avid game collector. I like collecting games almost more than playing them, which is simply just a time issue. But if there's something I have right now that's in big supply is free time. So I thought, well, why not show off some of my PS2 games? I figured I'd start there because, I don't know, a lot of people my age especially, I think, have pretty big nostalgia for PS2, and that's kind of what I'm going off of here is just my nostalgia. So, yeah, let's just jump right into it, and I'll start showing off some of my PS2 games. Some of these I might go more in depth on than others. Actually, I have quite a few PS2 games. I've got two big stacks of them sitting right here next to me. And I think my collection probably used to be at least twice this size. But that was until, GameStop came along, and I foolishly, as a youngster, decided to trade in a bunch of my games. So it's not as big as it used to be, but I've been kind of picking up some more PS2 games here and there. And I have plenty of other systems that I collect for too, but I just thought let's start with PS2 and see what we got here. Let's see what we got. I'll start with 007 Nightfire. Growing up, James Bond games were among some of my favorite games. Like, the term first-person shooter wasn't really a thing when I was a kid. If it was a shooting game, it was a James Bond game. That's just what we kind of always had. Starting with GoldenEye on the N64 and moving on up to the PS2. Nightfire from EA Games. I actually didn't play this one a super large amount. I mostly just played the split-screen multiplayer with my dad. And you can see this is when Pierce Brosnan was still like the official James Bond at the time. Still used his likeness. It's literally just a photo of him on the cover. And Nightfire's not like a movie or anything. It's just a game with Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. So it's kind of cool. I don't know if he actually does his voice in it. Oh yeah, all new storyline featuring Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. So it's actually like him performing James Bond in this game, which is kind of cool. But moving on from this one, still in the same vein of James Bond games, was Agent Underfire. And this game I loved a lot. I played this game a lot growing up. One of my favorite James Bond campaigns of all time. Just super, super fun to play. With a really fun story. Classic just James Bond goodness throughout it. Spy cars, Bond girls. They actually haven't, I don't know if you can see, but they actually advertise the Bond girls on it, which is kind of funny. They have a golden gun here. I don't remember using it too much. I think that was more of a multiplayer thing, but I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I played this. But definitely my favorite Bond campaign in any game. I actually got this at a garage sale growing up, just down the street from my grandma's house. It was the only game that they had there, and the sticker's kind of scratched off, but I think it says it was $15, maybe? And that was an exciting day, picking up this one here. Also, I'm sorry for the shaking camera. My setup is really primitive, so please forgive me. Be patient with me on that. I don't typically make videos like this, but like I said, just thought it'd be fun, something to do. Moving on. Okay, so here's another game that I really loved growing up. Aliens vs. Predator Extinction. This was a strategy game, kind of similar to like Halo Wars, if you ever played that. and there were three factions you could play as: the aliens, the predators, and the colonial marines. I never played as the marines because it was way more fun playing as either the aliens or the predators. But this was a game that when the local video rental store that we had in my town was still open, this was one that I would rent from there quite often, and just a super, super cool game. I think the aliens were probably the best to play as because they just had, I don't know, there was something about their mechanics and just like growing the hive that just felt the most natural. The predators were pretty cool too, but they just didn't fit the predator like lone hunter criteria. Like you had like massive armies of predators basically, all with different like gadgets and stuff. So I mean, it was still really cool, and the stories behind the predators, like fighting a rival clan that was like Disgrace, that was pretty cool. But the aliens, I think, were my favorite to play as, just because you would just totally just infect an area and wipe out like all life. It was a pretty brutal game. This I got at GameStop used. You see, I still got the sticker on there for, I don't know if you can see it, but $24.99. I actually still have the receipt for it from when I got it. This was something I started doing several years ago. Is every time I pick up a game, whether it was new or used, I'd always just stick the receipt right in the case, and that way, just years later, I can just kind of see, how much I paid for it and like what day I got it. Just kind of a fun little blast from the past type of thing. But yeah, that's Aliens vs. Predator Extinction. If you've never played this one, it holds up very, very well, and I would definitely still recommend playing this one. Okay, so next we have a game that these are kind of a niche category, I guess, but Cabela's Alaskan Adventures. Growing up, my family was very big into hunting. I'm not really much of a hunter myself anymore. I kind of, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I've been there, done that. I've bagged deer and whatnot, and I don't know. But I still like hunting games quite a bit. And this one was probably my favorite because it wasn't just like basic hunting. You were basically like in Alaska. I mean, that's why it's called Alaskan Adventures, obviously. And you could do all kinds of things. You could go fishing, ice fishing, ATVing, just explore all these really cool wilderness settings in Alaska, and bag different games. There was actually a dangerous game like grizzly bears and stuff like that. That was another Cabela's game. I think it was called Cabela's Dangerous Hunts. I think they made 2 of them, and that one was pretty cool too. I don't think I ever owned it, but that one was like everything you hunted was trying to kill you, so that was pretty interesting too. But this was just one that I actually spent quite a bit of time on. Also, another thing about this game is, as far as like case quality goes, this one's still in like the best condition out of some of like my games that I have, which is, I don't know, just kind of nice. I still have the manual for it and everything too. You can see some nice hunting tips in here. But anyways, that's Cabela's Alaskan Adventures. A lot of fond memories with this one. I see it was published by Activision, which is interesting. Okay, so here's another, well, not another, but a movie tie-in game. This is the Pixar Cars game for PS2, and I love Cars. Honestly, it's one of my favorite Pixar films. I think it's kind of underrated. It's just funny, and I don't know, car jokes, the puns are good. I don't know, maybe I'm lame, but anyways, this was a really fun game. I think the reason this game, like I still have it and I've hung on to it for all these years, is because it is a very competent racing game. The races were very fun and at times very challenging, and overall it was just very well made. The cars had a very unique feel to them. Like, one thing that always, like, I remember about this game is, like, if you were, like, completely still and you would, like, steer right or steer left, you'd be playing as, like, Lightning McQueen, obviously. and you would like actually like the character model would like tilt left and right like it was actually alive and moving, and it just had a really like Cars feel to it. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I just felt really good to race in this game. Very competent and very well made. And yeah, that's Cars. Fun times. Fun times with that one. So next is my first experience with a very popular PlayStation mascot, and that would be Crash Bandicoot. I was not a PS1 kid growing up. I was an N64 kid. That's what we had. And then when the next generation came about, the PlayStation 2 was my first video game console. So I never played the original Crash trilogy or the racing game or what was the other one? Crash Bash, the party game. Those I all played many years later. But this was the first Crash game that I had, developed by Universal Interactive and Konami, apparently. This game was really fun. I don't know. I don't really have like a ton to say about it. I don't think I ever beat it, but it was a very solid game. Like I said, it was my first like Crash experience, so I know a lot of people who like grew up with the original Crash games kind of look down on this one a little bit. Like it's not as good to them. I always thought it was fun. There's a reason, like I said, I still have it. So, but pretty solid, pretty good time. And yeah, I guess that's Crash Bandicoot, Wrath of Cortex. Alright, so next we have Destroy All Humans. This game was amazing, and we are getting a remake of this game, actually, fairly soon. I think it comes out this year. THQ Nordic is heading the remake of it, and it looks really, really good. So the original, I believe, was published by THQ and made by Pandemic, they were like kings on the PS2 back in the day. They had so many good games. But if you've never played Destroy All Humans before, it's kind of a sandboxy type game set in the 1950s where you play as Crypto, who is basically like the classic like big-eyed gray alien that's obsessed with probing people and kidnapping cows and that sort of thing. And you do all kinds of mayhem-fused things like breaking other aliens out of Area 51, which kind of backfires on you, and disguising yourself as public figures. I mean, it was a really clever, fun game that... you don't really see stuff like this anymore. This was a very unique game for the time, and I think it's still pretty unique, and I'm really excited that we're getting a remake of it really soon. So yeah, that's Destroy All Humans. Definitely would still recommend playing this one, even if like you don't want to wait for the remake to come out. Like you can pick this one up pretty cheap if you have a PS2, and it's still a really good time. Okay, next is another movie tie-in game, which are usually pretty hit or miss. More often not, they're misses. But this one I always really liked. That's Ghost Rider. I have kind of a guilty pleasure for the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie. I always thought it was cool as a kid. I actually just watched it again recently, and it's just ridiculous. It's fun. It's over the top, and the game was even better than the movie, in my opinion. It's basically like a Devil May Cry clone, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And you play as the Ghost Rider, and you go around and beat up zombies and demons, and you get the motorcycle and the cool cowboy gun and the chain whip. And I just played a lot of this game. I believe it came out in the summer many, many years ago, and I just feel like that summer I just played this game for quite a bit. I still have the manual for it. But yeah, this game's always been kind of special to me. I know it's nothing fantastic, and like I said, movie tie-in games usually are not the greatest, but this one always seemed pretty great in my books. But it's been many years since I played it too, so I mean I could play it now and absolutely hate it. But yeah, I don't know. This one I always just really liked. So that's Ghost Rider. All right. Next. I'm going through this stack, and like every time I see like a title of a game, I just get really excited and nostalgic because a lot of these are just really great games in my opinion. This next one though, I've probably played more than a lot of these games combined, and that is Godzilla Save the Earth. This game is still amazing. I love the Godzilla games. This one in particular was always my favorite. You had a huge roster of Godzilla monsters, like classic Godzilla monsters. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I own just about every film, seen them all multiple times, and this game just was always so fun to play. It's basically like a three-dimensional fighting game that lets you play as one of, gosh, I don't know how many monsters there are. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so 17 classic Godzilla monsters that you can play as, each with their own individual abilities. And it had great multiplayer. It was a good party game just to plug in and play with friends and fight each other. I played through the campaign so many times because that's how you generated currency to like unlock more monsters. So, yeah, I just really, really love this game. Really love Godzilla in general. And, yeah, this one's always been very special to me. This is another one where I'd say if you are looking for some classic games to play, you have a PS2 and you've never played it, check out this one. A while back, I know the developers of the whole Godzilla... There's like a trilogy of Godzilla games. This was the third one, I believe. No, this was the second one. The third one was Unleashed. There was like a petition going around to remaster the trilogy and get them all released. I don't think it ever got anywhere, unfortunately, but I would absolutely love it if we got a remaster of this one in particular. The whole trilogy would be great too, but I'd be happy with just this one. Honestly, this one's very, very fun. Okay, next is another Bond game, kind of. This is GoldenEye Rogue Agent. Most of you are probably familiar with the classic GoldenEye movie tie-in game for the N64 that most people hold up to like the definitive James Bond game. This one was really interesting. It has nothing to do with that. GoldenEye is not a satellite weapon like it is in the GoldenEye movie or game. GoldenEye is literally a rogue agent. I can't remember who you are. Is it 00? That doesn't say. Basically, you're another agent who works alongside James Bond at the beginning, and something happens to you. And basically, the bad guys get to you. You get like shot in the eye, golden eye, and you're given this like cool hacker eye that allows you to hack consoles and like I think you could hack people's guns and stuff in it. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I played it. This was just a really fun like fan fiction-y type of James Bond game. You could dual wield in it. That was kind of like all the rage at the time because of Halo 2 and its dual wielding. But it was cool being the bad guy. You could team up with all the classic Bond villains that had apparently created their evil organization. You had like Goldfinger, Oddjob, Dr. No. It was just a fun shooter romp. I don't think I ever beat it. As a kid, I remember I found it pretty difficult. I could probably beat it now, but I just don't really have a desire to revisit it at the moment. But still a really fun game. I think it does have multiplayer on it too. So just a fun romp in the James Bond universe for kicks and giggles. Can't complain. Okay, so next, I'm going to bring two of them out at the same time. We had Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City. These were the ones I played the most growing up. I know a lot of people played San Andreas, and to this day I still have not played San Andreas. I know that's probably a sin at this point, but yeah, I don't know. I just always really loved GTA 3 in particular. Vice City was really cool too. It was like in the 80s and it was very like based on Scarface and that type of thing. But GTA 3, I don't know, I always just really loved this one. I liked the silent protagonists and just this was the one I probably spent the most time messing around in, just causing chaos and, getting bored and shooting up everything. Yeah, just really fun games. I mean, you guys know what GTA is. They're not obscure at all. They're probably one of the most famous game series of all time. But these are the ones I have for PS2 anyways. Someday I'll probably get around to playing San Andreas, but today is not that day. Alright. So coming up next, we have Guitar Hero. I remember when this was like set up in my local Walmart, and it was like such a like mind-blowing thing at the time. Like you could pick up the guitar and play it right there, play the demo, and it was just so unique and cool. And I always really, really loved the first Guitar Hero. I actually got this for my birthday with the, classic guitar controller. And I played this game quite a bit. I have the second Guitar Hero somewhere. I don't have a case for it because I picked it up used. And then I also have, let me think here. I have Guitar Hero 3 for the 360, as well as Metallica. I think I have Aerosmith and Warriors of Rock. Warriors of Rock I think was my favorite, but I mean this is the one that started it all. Just a great game. Actually got me into a lot of classic rock music. You have songs like Symphony of Destruction is on here. That's pretty cool. I Want to Be Sedated, Smoke on the Water. What was funny about this game is like your beginner songs were literally the beginner songs you would learn if you were actually learning guitar, like Smoke on the Water, Iron Man, that sort of thing. But yeah, just a really fun game. It's kind of a shame that Guitar Hero and Rock Band have kind of become a thing of the past at this point. But it's kind of a fun piece of gaming history, and I'm never, ever going to get rid of this one. Okay, so here's a game that kind of got overshadowed by another similar game that I'm actually going to get around to here in a little bit. But we're going to talk about this one first. This is Gun. Gun is, if you've never played it, it's kind of like a sandboxy western type of game. Think Grand Theft Auto, but in the Wild West. If that sounds familiar to you, you've probably played Red Dead Redemption. Gun came out, I think, after Red Dead Revolver, which was the first Red Dead game, which was more level-based. This one was actually more sandboxy. And it was a pretty brutal game. Like, you could actually, like, scalp people in it, which was pretty intense at the time. You could, like, sell their scalps to people, if I remember correctly. But I played this game quite a bit. Most of the game, if I remember correctly, was, like, you were just riding your horse in, like, big, empty, open world with... there was a few things you could do. It's definitely not on the level of, like, the more modern Red Dead games. But this game was always really, really fun to me. I remembered, actually, I think it got a port on the Xbox 360, too. But I had the PlayStation 2 one, obviously. This was always a really fun game. I pumped tons of hours into this one. And honestly, I really should play this one again. It's been way too long since I've saddled up and Gun. So yeah, that's Gun. Next is a game that more than likely you've probably never heard of. This game's called Headhunter. And this is kind of from a time in gaming that I really miss, where, like, there was just, like, a ton of really obscure, not, like, indie necessarily. Like, now we have, like, the indie game field, and then it's, like, all AAA other than that. But everyone was trying to throw their hat into the ring and come out with, like, a unique game that was going to be the next big thing. And I've never heard anyone else talk about Headhunter. If you've ever played this before, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts were. I don't even really remember what it's like, to be honest with you. It's, from what I remember, just a third-person shooter type of game where you're like kind of in the future and you wake up from a coma and you're like this elite cop. You're kind of like a Judge Dredd. Like you're like judge, jury, and executioner. You can just, take the law into your own hands. But yeah, this one was always interesting. I'm glad I still have it because if I didn't, I probably would just forget that it exists. So yeah, that's Headhunter. Like I said, if you've ever played this, let me know what your thoughts are on it down below. If this is a favorite of yours or if you hated it or whatever. Because like I said, I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who's ever played this game aside from myself. So yeah, that's Headhunter. Okay, next is one of my favorite PS2 games. This is Jak 2. Now, I never played the first Jak and Daxter game. I believe a friend brought this over to my house once, and I was like instantly hooked. This is more akin to a kind of a Grand Theft Auto clone, like mixed with third-person action adventure level-based areas. Like it's very unique if you've never played Jak 2 before. But it's got like platforming as well as like tons of different guns you can get, and you could steal like these hover cars and hover bikes, and it was just like a way grittier setting, a little more edgy than the first game from what I understand. Like I said, I never played the first Jak and Daxter, but I have played Jak 2 and Jak 3 quite a bit, and I always loved this one. This one was always very fun. I've been meaning to pick up the HD collection on PlayStation because I think you can get it on PS4 now. If not, for sure you can get it on PS3. But yeah, this one was always just really fun. Like it's not very obscure. A lot of people know about Jak and Daxter. This is another one where I'd say if you've never played it before and don't mind playing older games, this one holds up very, very well. So yeah, that's Jak 2. Alright, next is my favorite game in the Tomb Raider series. This is Tomb Raider Legend. I actually just recently replayed this on the Xbox One. It's on the Marketplace, and you can play it on there. I don't even think it's like a 360 port. I mean, it probably is a port, but it's just listed as a game on there, so it doesn't use the backwards compatibility, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's been, like, I don't know, 8 months since I played it. But this game was awesome. Typical Tomb Raider, third person, puzzle solving, shooting. It's kind of a early version of Uncharted if you're more familiar with the Uncharted series. This was quite a bit different than the modern reboot of Tomb Raider. This is a little more fun and over the top, not as dark and gritty. This is back when Lara Croft had a way more likable personality. She was more like this cocky, just like kind of like a scoundrel type of character, whereas now it's more about the survival and everything's so like my family, and there was still like some heart and darkness to classic Tomb Raider, but I just prefer this iteration of Lara Croft. I just think she's more fun and more entertaining as a protagonist. Not to say the new games aren't any good, but this one's just always been my favorite. And like I said, you can get this on the Xbox Marketplace, and I'm sure you can get it on the PlayStation 1 as well. So if you've never played this one, once again, just a game that really holds up well, in my opinion. It's not perfect by today's standards, but it's still really, really entertaining. And it's not super long either. I mean, you can play through it in maybe, 8 hours. And I don't know. It's been a while, so I don't remember exactly. But I remember it didn't take me too long to beat. And it's just a good time. I can see my camera shaking horribly. I'm so sorry. Okay, so here's Madden 03. Not much to say. Madden's been more or less the same for many, many years now. This one was always kind of my favorite, just because it was always like the first one that we had. I probably played this one the most out of any Madden game. Um, oh, I have a cat in here who's very angry. Shush, Gary. Anyways, I was actually looking through this one before I started recording, and I found this in here. And I'm like, what the heck am I storing in my Madden case? And guess what? It's more Madden. I have Madden 07 in here, but then I have another copy of Godzilla Save the Earth in here as well. Don't ask. I have no idea. But I remember we had Madden 03 for, I don't know, several years, and then Madden 07 was like on sale, and I picked it up like, hey, let's try a newer Madden. And honestly, I always liked 03 better. It's probably a nostalgia thing. One thing I do remember is Andrew WK's Party Hard was one of the songs on here, and that was pretty cool. Okay, and Gary's going to help now, apparently. You done? Get down. Get down. Oh, cats. Come on. Get out. Get out. Okay. Moving on. The next two games I got are Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. These I actually bought maybe 2 years ago at Pawn America when they were still a thing. And I've never actually played Sons of Liberty. I have played Snake Eater, though. I played the HD release on PS3. I believe they did like a kind of like a trilogy release with 2 and Peace Walker. And I never played 2. I played part of Peace Walker, but never got all the way through it. But my friend had lent it to me, and this was the one he wanted me to play the most because it was his favorite. And this is a really, really good game. Very, very dated controls. It's kind of hard to play when you're so used to like modern game controls. This is kind of when like everyone wanted to have their own, controllers set up or whatever. But still, if you can get past that, this one's still really, really fun. I have been meaning to play this one. I actually played the remake of the first Metal Gear game like last summer on the GameCube. And I loved playing that on the GameCube. I loved the over-the-topness of it and the visuals. And the GameCube controller was just meant for that game, in my opinion. Like, I don't know, it just felt really, really good. But yeah, one of these days I gotta play this one. But I just wanted to have these for my collection. Just cool to have the original releases. I don't know if you can see this one, but I paid like $4 for this one and like $7 for this one. And I paid too much for this cat. Who doesn't apparently want me to record videos right now, but that's too bad because I'm going to anyways. Alright. We're a little over halfway through the collection. If you're still here, you're a real trooper. I appreciate it. So, next is Mortal Kombat Armageddon. This game is awesome. This is kind of when MK got away from the 2D fighting experience. That was kind of the whole PS2 era of Mortal Kombat in general. But this game had such a huge roster. And a lot of people complained, yeah, it had a huge roster, but a lot of the characters were garbage. But to me, that was kind of the charm of it. Like, I loved playing as some of the really dumb characters, like Mocap and Meat. If you've played this game, you know what I'm talking about. They're just ridiculous characters that really have no business being in the game, but that's kind of why they're awesome to play as. But this one was always one of my favorites as far as like the PS2 Mortal Kombats went. I think I own Deception as well, but I don't think I have the case for it, so I think that's in like a sleeve somewhere. But this was the better one, in my opinion, anyways. Just really fun. And it was kind of like the end of the Mortal Kombat timeline before they rebooted it with the current lineup of games, which are also really, really good. Better than this one, honestly. But this one's still really fun, and every once in a while I'll pop this one out and when I have some friends over and we'll play some classic Mortal Kombat. So yeah. Oh yeah, this had like mini games in it too. Like it had like a Mario Kart type of mode in it where it was like combat kart or whatever. What do they call it? Go Racing MK stat Motor Combat. That's what it was called. Just ridiculous. Just kind of fun extra stuff that you don't really see in games anymore. But they definitely put their all into it. These came out from Midway, which I think was, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. All right. So next, we have Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles. Growing up, I was a really big Naruto fan, and this was the first Naruto game that I ever played, and it was just really, really fun. I haven't played it in a very long time, so I can't really attest to how well it's held up. But I do remember pumping a ton of hours into it. It basically just focused on some of the early arcs from the original Naruto anime. I think the final fight is you fight Orochimaru in like an uncanon type of boss battle type of thing. But it was still really fun. It had like an actual sort of upgrade system to it, and you could like unlock different combos to do. It had like quite a bit of features for like an anime tie-in game. And like I said, I pumped a ton of hours into this one back in the day, so I remember it being really fun. It's just been a very long time since I picked it up. So yeah, that's Uzumaki Chronicles. Okay. Next is another game that I pumped a ton of hours into. I actually got this one, like, basically towards the end of when the PS2 was relevant. This is Predator Concrete Jungle, and I want, like, a new version of this game so bad, because this game was just awesome to play. Just classic Predator, super gory. You basically played as like a disgraced predator that was trying to regain his honor in like this futuristic city setting, and you could like do all the things the predator could do. You got the cloaking, all the different weapons, you could take trophies, you could even like skin people, which was pretty gruesome even by like the graphic standard back then. But it was just a ton of fun. Just a great game. So many hours pumped into playing as the Predator and unlocking all the different skins and weapons. I'm pretty excited for Predator Hunting Grounds, which is coming out fairly soon. I got in on the beta for that and thought it was pretty fun. So I am looking forward to playing that. But I would really love another, like almost like a follow-up to this game, just a third-person Predator campaign with like some sandbox elements. I think would be really, really cool. Like so many of the games I've said before, this one does hold up relatively well. The controls are a little weird. I remember like a lot of them were like inverted, which was kind of odd. I can't remember if you could change it or not. But yeah, if you can get past that, this is still a great game to play. Up next, we have Red Dead Revolver. So most people are pretty familiar with Red Dead Redemption, and Red Dead Redemption 2 being Rockstar's Western Grand Theft Auto game series. But before that came Red Dead Revolver. And this game was very different than those ones. It was level-based. It was kind of just different than most games that Rockstar is known for. But I always really, really had fun with this one. It had kind of like supernatural elements to it. Like I remember there was like one boss where he had like a coffin on his back, and like inside the coffin was like a Gatling gun. So it was like really over the top stuff like that. Or there was like a snake oil salesman essentially, that like his potions actually worked. So he was like basically casting acid magic on you and stuff like that. But this was a really, really fun game. Introduced the whole Deadeye mechanic. if you're a big fan of the modern Red Dead games and you've never played this one, I know it is ported on the PS4. You can get it on the marketplace on there. I've actually been meaning to pick it up and play through it again because this one is really, really fun. And I'm just kind of a sucker for westerns in general, so this always scratched that itch for me. But yeah, that's Red Dead Revolver. Great game. Okay, next is a game I actually picked up not too long ago. This is Rune, Viking Warlord. And a friend of mine told me about this game, knowing that I was a big fan of the Dark Souls series, and said this is kind of like a really old Dark Souls in his opinion. And so I thought, yeah, I'll give it a chance. So I picked it up, and one thing I can say about it is ugly. It is a very ugly, rough game, but it also is very fun. I never got too far in the story. I started playing it, and it's pretty difficult, I will say. But what makes the PS2 version of this game shine, before I get into that, actually, I should mention, I believe this was a PC exclusive originally, and then this is a PlayStation port of it. So you can get Rune Classic, it's called, on the Steam Marketplace for like, I don't know, like $10 or something like that. And it looks a lot better than this game. I've seen side-by-side comparisons. And, like, obviously this is the PS2, and things were rougher then. But even for a PS2 game, this game was pretty rough looking. But one thing that this has over the Steam version, from what I understand, maybe the Steam version has this too, but I'm not sure. But this has couch co-op. Not couch co-op, but couch multiplayer, I should say. So basically like deathmatch with like you and your friends, and you could just like battle each other in these crazy like gladiatorial pits with traps and different weapons. And it's a pretty fun, like, grab some beer and pretzels and mess around with a bunch of friends type of game. That aspect of it holds up very, very well. But I think if you don't have nostalgia for it, it might be kind of hard to get through the story mode. I do plan on getting the PC one, just to see how different it really is. But I did like this one. It's really cool. It's just, it's very dated. Plus, there's not enough Viking games out there. Like, what do we have? For Honor, I think, is one of the only, like, modern Viking games, and even that's not really, like, a pure Viking game. A lot of the other Viking games that I see come out tend to be not the greatest quality. So I would like to see like a more modern version of this. And from what I understand, they are making a Rune 2 that's currently in development. I think it was like a Kickstarter to get it going. So I've been kind of keeping an eye on that and hoping that that's going to be good. Also, speaking of Viking games, this is a random tangent, but rumor has it the new Assassin's Creed game is going to be like a Nordic Viking setting, which would be really, really awesome if they did that, because since they rebooted to this more like open world RPG format, I've been really into the Assassin's Creed games. So to have an Assassin's Creed Viking game like that would be really sick. But anyways, that's enough of that. This is Rune. Fun game, especially if you're playing with a few buddies. Can't really go wrong. Okay, next we have Sly 2 Band of Thieves. So the Sly series has always been really interesting to me, but this is the only one that I ever played a lot of, and I really, really do like this game. This is one that I'm really, to my knowledge, they haven't released like a collection on the PS4 of this series yet, which is kind of a bummer. I know it's on the PS3, but I don't think they've ported it to the PS4 yet. It's been a while since I checked, but anyways, Sly 2 was always the only one that I owned growing up. But I remember when this game was coming out, like me and my friends were all like super excited for it. Just a really overhyped type of thing. And on the playground at school, we would pretend to be the cast of Sly 2 and go on heists and stuff like that. And those were really good, nostalgic elementary school times that I always think of when I see the cover of this game. But But yeah, this is just a great, like, I don't know if you'd consider it a collectathon. It's like a third-person platformer action game that actually relies on a lot of stealth. Really fun, really, really cool art style. Everything's got a very comic book feel to it, which I think helps it, like, stand up, or stand... How do I say this? It stands the test of time. Like, you can look at the graphics of this, and it just looks way more passable than a lot of other games from this era because of the art style. Yeah, so just a really cool game. Let you play as Bentley and Murray. Is that the hippos? Yeah, the Murray. And yeah, it was just really fun. I'm kind of babbling here a little bit. This is another game I haven't played in a long time, so I'm kind of just rambling of what I remember about it. But I remember I always really liked it. So that's Sly 2. Okay, next is a game that apparently we're getting a remaster of soon. But this is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. This is another game that I just have a lot of fond memories of playing growing up. I actually think I played the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game more than this one, but I don't think I ever owned that one. I think I borrowed it and like played it way more than this one. But I remember this one being harder for some reason. I don't know why. Basically, Plankton's like sending robots out to attack people in Bikini Bottom, and you're playing as SpongeBob and you fight them, and you get to do ridiculous things like tongue surf, and you can play as Patrick and belly bounce people. I do remember that. I don't think I ever got to play as Sandy that I remember. You know, she's playable, but I don't think I ever got that far. This is always a fun one. I'm really excited for the remaster to come out because I'm definitely going to be picking that up. Just a fun time with classic SpongeBob back when it was, in my opinion, way funnier. A lot of the jokes from the show carry over to the game, so that was always really cool. But yeah, that's Battle for Bikini Bottom. Okay, so next we're getting into the Star Wars category of games. For those of you who don't know me very well, I am a massive Star Wars fan, so I definitely have a fair share of Star Wars games, especially for the PS2. And I think we'll start with the Battlefront franchise. Back when EA didn't own Battlefront, Pandemic was heading them. And man, I can't tell you how many hours I put into both of these games. They were both just so good. Really fond memories of playing both of them. And they were both very different from each other, too. They added a bunch of features in 2, but they also took some things away, which was really interesting. I'm guessing that was just a sign of the times type of thing, where you can't put everything into a game that you want. But both of these were always just super fun to play. If you've played the newer games but not the older ones, I would highly recommend checking one or both of these out. They still hold up very, very well. This is a game that me and my friends still boot up quite often to play with each other. And yeah, it's basically just the gameplay is just capturing areas on the battlefield and defeating all the enemy soldiers. But you got to play as all the different factions from the prequel and sequel eras of Star Wars. Battlefront 2, I think, is when the Clone Wars era really got fun because it incorporated a lot of stuff from Episode 3, so there was a lot more vehicles and stuff like that. You could also play as heroes in this one, which was really fun. They actually had a mode where it was just a hero fight on Tatooine, and it was all the good guys versus all the bad guys. And I think I played that more than any other game mode in this, because it was just so much fun to just have these titans of characters just battle each other in all-out warfare. But, yeah, Battlefront games, super great. Can't recommend them enough. Next is another Star Wars game. This is Star Wars The Clone Wars. I don't think the disc is actually in this one. No, I think it's in a little disc CD thing. I don't know what you call them. Just a bunch of PS2 games I have in there. But anyways, this was, I think this came out right around when Attack of the Clones came out, maybe a little bit later than that. And it's like, I think it was all vehicle combat, if I remember correctly. Every level was a different vehicle that you got to play as. This was kind of the introduction of the Republic tank, which a lot of the levels revolved around playing as. I can't remember where, or if you could play as like actual soldier units. Like I think maybe you could play as certain Jedi, like Mace Windu or something like that. It's been a long time since I played this one. This one was like never one of my absolute favorite Star Wars games, but it's a Star Wars game, and of course I was going to get it and play it, so it was still a good time, and getting to play as some of these vehicles more in-depthly. I can't talk today. More in-depth experience with these vehicles was really fun, and Star Wars, like, of course I'm going to play it. It's great. Okay, next might be my favorite Star Wars game. It's really hard for me. Republic Commando is kind of tied with this one as my favorite. But this is Star Wars Bounty Hunter. And in my opinion, the biggest crime that came from the Attack of the Clones movie was killing off Jango Fett, spoiler alert, without giving him, time to be involved in the Clone Wars. And this game kind of made up for that by allowing you to play as him leading up to Attack of the Clones. Quite a few years before, actually, because I believe it's like basically him becoming the template for the clone army. But anyways, in this game you get to play as Jango Fett. You get a ton of cool gadgets and weapons, and you're a bounty hunter. You get to go and hunt people down for shady people, and it's just a really, really good time. And it's also a very difficult game. As you progress through it, and especially when you get to like the last quarter of the game, the levels become very, very difficult. This is a game where it's just tons upon tons of enemies, and you are just mowing down armies by yourself, essentially. But that being said, it is very, very fun. I believe Tamara Morrison does the voice of Jango in the game, which is really cool. And it's just really cool getting Jango some spotlight, because he's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. So yeah, Star Wars Bounty Hunter. Amazing game. This is another game that I believe is on the PlayStation Marketplace. Actually, I know it is because I bought it. So if you have any interest in playing this and you haven't before, check it out. It's like $8. Do it. It's super good. Alright, up next we have the Lego Star Wars video game and Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy. These are another couple games that I can't even tell you how many hours I put into. Both are really, really fun to me. I think I played the first one a bit more, just because this came out during when I was young and the prequel movies were coming out, and it was very exciting to me. Whereas, this was still a really great game too. I think this had bonus missions in it where you could play as the bounty hunters and do stuff like that. That was all really cool. And I know with these games, you can get them now where they're together. It's called the Complete Saga, and it basically just comes with everything. And you can get it super cheap if you've never played it before. But these games have an immense amount of charm to them. Just very, very fun, humorous, and I mean, it's Legos and Star Wars. What's not to like? You play through basically all the major events in both of these trilogies, and it's just a good time. Can't recommend them enough. Alright, next is another game that most people probably haven't heard of. This game's called Stuntman. And Stuntman is Okay, I know more people who've heard of Driver than they've heard of Stuntman, and this is made by the same people. I've never played Driver, but I have played Stuntman. and this game is really, really interesting. You're basically a stuntman for all these different movies, and each level is like a different movie where you're on a film set, and you have to do the stunts perfectly as you drive through the level. And it's a lot of trial and error and making sure you can get through the entire scene without wrecking the car or without going the wrong direction, that sort of thing. But there was a lot of different movie types, like I see you got like this one here where you're like in a military jeep. The one I remember the most is there was like a Dukes of Hazzard spin-off, sort of. I think that's what they're depicting. I don't know how well you can see. I think that's what they're depicting here, where you jump the trains and stuff like that. That one was always my favorite. But this was a very challenging game because you had to be perfect in all the levels. I mean, you could not afford to mess up at all because not only were you timed, but you were also rated at the end of it. And if your score was too low, you wouldn't pass the level. You'd have to restart. I don't think I ever beat it because of how difficult it was for me at the time. But still, just a really cool concept, and I would love to see like a more modern iteration of Stuntman come back. I think that'd be pretty interesting. Getting down to the bottom of the stack here, or relatively close to it, we've got Simpsons Hit and Run. This game is basically a Grand Theft Auto clone where you play as Homer Simpson, and it's great. It is just plain great. Very funny, classic Simpsons humor, and like instead of like pulling people out of their cars and robbing them, they explain it as, oh yeah, everyone in Springfield's friendly and they'll just like give you a ride places. So like you'd go up to a car, it would like phase you into the car, and all the crazy stuff that you were doing, you could just imagine like Homer sitting in the passenger seat while some random citizen is doing all these crazy stunts and whatnot to like help you get your objective completed, which I always thought was very funny. But yeah, this is a great game. This is another one that really holds up well today, in my opinion. Because it's like I said, it's basically Grand Theft Auto, but Simpsons. You're in Springfield. You get to drive iconic vehicles like the Plow King, and you get Homer's pink car. It's like your main ride at the beginning. Yeah, it's just a fun game, fun time. If you like the earlier Simpsons, another show that, in my opinion, was way funnier back in the day than it is now, you'll definitely get a kick out of this one. It's really, really good. Whoops, I'm dropping things. Alright, next is Marvel Ultimate Alliance. This is the special edition of the game, apparently. It has an extra disc, I guess? Bonus disc. I have no idea what's on this. Should put that in to see what it actually is. Recently, Nintendo just came out with Ultimate Alliance 3 for the Switch, which I've been very interested in picking up, but I just haven't gotten around to. But this is just kind of a fun, turn your brain off, pick out a dream team of Marvel heroes, and set them loose on a chaotic story battling huge hordes of foes. I really loved like the hero collection of this game, because as you progressed, you'd like unlock more heroes that you could make a team out of. And it wasn't, I mean, this came out in a time before the Marvel movies. The cinematic universe had gotten really big. So you're able to have Spider-Man and Elektra and Ghost Rider like all on the same team, and I always thought that was really, really cool. You also had the X-Men and Captain America and Iron Man and Thor. I mean, it was just a really cool, classic comic book feeling game, and I always really liked this one. This one I see Jacob from Cole. I think this was my cousin's game, and his PlayStation broke, so he gave it to me. So thanks, Cole. Really like this one. The sequel's also very, very good. I remember the cutscenes for this game were really cool. Just very classic Marvel art style to them. I've actually been meaning to replay this one. Um, I'd like to. I might actually play this today. Actually, this sounds fun. It's been a while since I've booted this one up. But yeah, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. If you like superheroes, you'll probably like Ultimate Alliance. It's a good time. I don't really have anything bad to say about any of the games in my collection, at least for the PS2, because most of the ones I still have are games that I still really like and wouldn't want to get rid of. Okay, so here's a movie tie-in game that I got as a gift, and this is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And this game's actually pretty fun. Like I said, I got it as a gift. It was kind of like an unexpected gift from a buddy of mine back in the day. And it did have co-op, which was pretty cool. You could play as Wallace and Gromit together. And a lot of it just focused on sucking up rabbits into like a vacuum cleaner pack type thing and shooting them out. And as a kid, I always thought that was hilarious. And as an immature adult, I still think that's hilarious. It's pretty great. So shooting bunnies at people is a good time. This is a really good movie. If you've never seen Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it's very clever, very witty. It's made by the same people who made Chicken Run, if you've ever seen that, which is also a great movie. But yeah, I always really liked this game. Just a really fun time. See, it was published by Konami, which is just weird to think that Konami published the Wallace and Gromit game. But yeah, so that's Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And the last game that I have for you today is Shaolin Showdown. This is a show from, I believe it was on Kids WB back in the day, and I think it eventually made its way to Cartoon Network. But this was a great show. Seriously underrated. I don't know if underrated is the right word, but I just feel like it's very forgotten by a lot of people. Hopefully seeing the cover of this kind of jogs your memory. But this is a really cool game as far as like a tie-in game is concerned. Basically, there's these artifacts called Shengon Wu. And what's cool about the game is you could use a bunch of them in like these fighting stages. It kind of had like a Smash Brothers type feel in a way. I don't know, it's really hard to describe. Did let you play as most of the cast, 6 playable characters. Yeah, I don't know. I really miss this show. I think I can watch it on Amazon. I just looked up recently. Like, it's on Amazon Prime. I'm going to have to check this one out again. But I just remember this game being really fun and surprisingly good for another tie-in game, which, you know, tie-in games tend to be made just to get a quick buck off the franchise rights. But this one was pretty fun. And there's another one that I really should boot up and play again because it's been a while. But yeah, so that's the end of my PS2 collection, guys. If you're still watching this long-winded video about my collection, I do really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm stuck up in quarantine right now. Not supposed to go anywhere unless it's absolutely necessary, so just trying to find new ways to pass the time, and I thought, why don't I talk about my PS2 games, because there's a lot of nostalgia there for me and a lot of good memories playing these old games. So if there's any games that I showed that are like favorites of yours, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experiences with them. If you want me to go more in depth on any of these, I'd be happy to do a video on that. Like I said, I've got plenty of free time right now, so I'd be more than happy to do so. So thanks again for watching, guys. God bless. May the Force be with you, and we'll see you next time.